Hello, this is Priscilla from Speakers Connect. Today we are very happy to have Fredrik Haren with us. Fredrik is very special. He is the creativity explorer and he has traveled to over 60 countries to research on creativity and have so far conducted more than 2,000 presentations to companies and organizations on his findings. So today we are very grateful to have him to spend some time with us.
Yes,
hello, Fredrik. Thank you for your time today.
Singapore.
Yes, and hello from Hong Kong.
Yes.
So Fredrik, the world is now going through a crisis. And I know that you mentioned a lot of times that during such time, we have to be even more creative. May I know more about your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, I think last week was 50 years since Apollo 13, right? Remember Apollo 13, there were an oxygen tank exploded and suddenly they had no oxygen. And there's a beautiful movie made about it. And
yes,
that's the classic example of a crisis. Like it was not planned for, they're in the middle of nowhere, literally, and they have to come up with a new solution. And this classic quote that everyone likes to quote, but is Houston, we have a problem. But because I was doing research on it, I just found out last week that they didn't say Houston, we have a problem. They said, okay. Houston, we had a problem, which is a huge difference. So already when they were contacting Houston, they already in their head went from, uh-oh, we have a problem, to, uh-oh, we had a problem, but now we are in solving mode, resolving mode. So I think it's a great example of the lesson there is that they didn't stick in, or we have this terrible phase of we have a problem, but they went into how can we solve the problem. And that's the phase we should be in. Because creativity, if you think about it, if you ask people, what is an idea? What's creativity? One of the most common answers, I would say one of the top 5 common answers is that creativity is a solution to a problem, or an idea is a solution to a problem. So now the whole world has a very big problem. And creativity is to find a solution to a problem. So even if it's like, how can I get to work when it's raining? That's a very small problem, but you still need creativity to solve it. So actually from this perspective, it's actually it's good. You have to have problems if you want to be creative. The important thing is that mindset from the astronaut, it's that you have a positive, like a realistic, but still positive approach on how to solve the problem. That's where we should be right now. That's where we always should be when we have problems. How can I solve the problem that I have identified? If you think about it this way, we should have more problems, actually. The more problems we have, the more problems we can solve, the better the world would be.
Definitely. So we should not be just stuck that, okay, we are facing, we should be on the next mode that we are now solving it.
Yeah, but we also need to realize that this is a very big problem, and that means we will have to come up with very big or a lot or big disruptive ideas. So, but still, you can look at it as a big scary problem, or you can look at it as a big amazing problem that will infuse so much creativity. And I think that's actually what we've seen. We've seen a lot of creativity come out of this crisis, but it takes, first we are in shock and everyone knows what the hell is going on. And then we freeze for a while and say, well, I have no idea, I don't know. But now the world is in a very, very creative space, I would argue.
Yeah, I do agree. I think this is basically the stages that we all go through in the past few weeks.
Exactly. And we do that with small problems too. But now the whole humanity is at the same time. And now we are in this, okay, let's solve it. Let's roll up our sleeves and come up with new ideas mode. That doesn't mean the problem is away. Just like Apollo 13, they still had a problem. But now the world is in, okay, how can we solve the problem? And that's a much better way. And I think we will be in this creative phase for months and months and months. And hopefully stay in that phase even after the problem is gone. We will stay in this, wow, we were able to come up with a lot of creative solutions fast, hopefully.
Definitely. So would you think that there are some individuals or companies that are more successful in managing the crisis than some others? So if you look at them, any particular characteristics that they share that maybe we can learn from those more successful examples?
Yeah, so that's what I think you can see now. You can just go and Google Corona crisis and you will creativity, and you'll find so many different aspects of it. And it's so as someone who studies creativity, it's so interesting to see how people approach their creativity. So a lot of these a lot of these creativities now is very much about making us feel better, like Lady Gaga or some famous celebrity singing from home instead, or people doing silly songs, or all these memes that go around. And I think we saw that when people were in it's all gloom and doom, and then we said, okay, let's try to change our mindset. So we saw a lot of that. At the same time, you have the total different kind of creativity, which is like I live in Singapore. Singapore was very quick to say, because we had SARS and bird flu and stuff here before. So Singapore was very quick to say, okay, this is going to be a problem. Okay, let's go into problem solving more quickly. And Singapore did that very early. Then you have other companies that takes a very practical approach, like Scandinavian Airlines, who had to fire 10,000 people. But one person on the board of Scandinavian Airlines was also on a board on a hospital, and they said, okay, I'll take 1,000 of the flight attendants and I'll retrain them in a week so they can be simple nurses and help in the hospitals. And suddenly they went from being air stewardess to being fired to working in a hospital within the same month. And I think that, and another Scania, they make trucks, and suddenly no one was buying trucks anymore. But there was another Swedish company that was doing the ventilators, and they were, of course, they needed help. So they had a lot of skilled people working in doing trucks, and they took those, instead of firing them, they just moved them to the factory to do those machines instead, and just borrowed their staff. That's very practical. So you have a very practical approach to the problem, or you have a very emotional approach to the problem. So it's interesting to see how people channel and fuel their creativity. And then you also have some people who go into the more darker side and become very angry and use their creativity on that side. So that's always going to happen in crisis.
Yes, yes. It depends on where you put your energy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I always say there's not one kind of creativity. So some people go in and suddenly go into lockdown mode and they start to paint, which they haven't done for 20 years. Some people go hardcore and pivot their business models. I want people to understand that the creativity is not one thing. It's a lot of different things. Like IKEA is a very creative company, but they're all focusing on saving cents and dollars, right? On small things. Ericsson is a creative company, but they're building systems that will work around the world and that will work even in catastrophes. Totally different approaches. One very engineer driven, one very customer driven or consumer driven. They're both extremely creative. They're just very different. And I think we should look at that as individuals too. What kind of a creative individual am I? And then how do I fuel my creativity? How do I feed it? How do I nurture it?
Certainly. So since you are now with us, any tips or how we can train ourselves to be more creative to start with?
Okay, so one of the most so I've been speaking about creativity and studying creativity for more than 20 years, and when I do workshops, not the speeches, but when I do workshops and I go deeper into and I study what is the thing that holds people back, what I realize is a lot of people are not aware of their own creative strengths. They haven't sat down and thought about their own creative process. So they just say, I am creative, or they say, I'm not creative. And either of those answers are wrong. You should say, how am I creative? So very, very effective way you can do is you sit down for 15 minutes, and you should let it take 15 minutes and say, okay, what are the 5 best ideas I've ever had in my life? Okay, write those down and say, when did I have those ideas? What was the circumstances? Was I alone, or was I with a bunch of people? Was there a lot of pressure on me? Like, was there a deadline? And then suddenly one night before the deadline, I had this amazing, I couldn't sleep. I was up all night, and that was the amazing idea. Or is it like, no, I cannot work with deadlines. Like I personally cannot have deadlines. I self-publish all my books because I just don't like deadlines to kill my creativity. So, but some people love it. Like the Apollo 13 people, they were the kind of people who needed deadlines. Like they will die in 3 days. That was good for them, not good for me. Okay, and also, what kills your creativity? For some people, it's like, oh, introvert. I can't stand brainstorming sessions. It's just too much people, too much. I get so tired. Or some people want to travel. So if you look at when you are the most creative and you're the least creative, and then you can start to see a pattern. So in my case, I need a lot of inspiration. Like I need to see a lot. I get very tired of one thing very quickly. So I need to see a lot of different things. And that's why I travel like 20, 30, 35 countries per year. I want to go to North Korea and Maldives and Canada and Finland. And I want to study government. I want to study Nike, and all kinds of companies, all kinds of cultures, all kinds of people, all kinds of aspects of it. And because I want a lot of different inspiration. But then I also need total quiet because I'm an introvert. So 8 to 10 months per year, I travel like a maniac. I travel more than a commercial airline pilot, okay? Normally, not these times, but normally. And then 2, 3, maybe sometimes 4 months per year, I don't leave my home. I have an island, as you know, I have an island in Sweden. I live on an island for 2 months and I just sit. And that's when my brain takes all of those different inputs that I saw for the 8 to 10 months and then rearranges. Oh, I saw that in North Korea. I saw that in the Maldives. I take this, I combine it. Oh, that's a great idea. So I need inspiration and I need pauses. Some people might say, oh, that sounds too stressful for me and I hate traveling. Okay, fine, but that's my creative process. What is yours? And if you realize that, then that's half of the battle is done. And if we have time, the other half is to learn how to have problems. But if we have time, I'll share quickly about that too.
Well, I really like that. So what you are saying is that it is very important if we can find our pattern. If we know our pattern, we can repeat it.
Yes. So for example, J.K. Rowling, she sat on a train between Manchester and London and an idea popped into her head. And that's very common. About 20-25% will say, I have good ideas when I'm traveling. So if that's you, invest in noise cancellation earphones, buy a nice book like the idea book or a Moleskine or something, and have a place like this is where I have good ideas. Be aware, this is my idea space. Some people say toilet, go to your boss and say, you know what, I would love to have a toilet with my name on it so I can sit as long as I want, okay? I'm not kidding. Or I'm not good. I need to be together with other people. Okay, good. Be aware of that. Whenever you have a problem, invite your friends over and solve the problem together. So that is such an important part. The other part is the problem solving part of it. And I think this is very important for where we are right now. Because if creativity is a solution to a problem, we then realize that the most important part of the creative process is actually to define the problem.
Yes.
And 99% of people don't even realize this. And even if they realize, they don't spend time on that. We skip the problem and we go straight to solving. Like we like to solve the problem. We don't like to define the problem. So the good example is right now. So we're having a corona crisis right now. So what's the problem? A lot of people, oh, there's a virus. Actually, that's not the problem. For most people, the problem is not that there's a virus. Even if you get the virus is not the problem. The problem is that you're sick. But if you don't have the virus, the problem is not the virus. The problem is that the virus is wreaking havoc with our economy. That's not actually, but that's not actually not also the problem. So the problem needs to be defined specifically and very targeted and as a question that triggers your brain to be creative. So for example, let's say a lot of companies are now losing revenue. So what's the problem? Loss of revenue. No, that's not the problem. The problem is we are not getting revenue. That's the problem. The loss of we want the revenue back. Okay, now turn that into a question. So how could we get our revenue back? Is a much better problem than we've lost our revenue. Because the loss of revenue doesn't trigger anything in your brain. And there's a financial crisis doesn't trigger anything in your brain. That just makes you freeze. But how can we get the revenue back is suddenly starting to trigger. How could we use, the more specific you are, the better. How can we use our existing customers to buy something from us that they normally wouldn't buy? It's even better, right? So the more specific you are, the more and then you tweak it. How can we use our non-existing customers to buy something they haven't bought before? How can we use our existing clients to buy something they have bought before? How can we use the partners of our existing clients? Every time you tweak the question, you get different ideas, like you're looking at the problem from slightly different angles. So I never say, you should never have one problem. You should have 100 problems. And you send those 100 problems into your head, and then you just go to sleep. And then your subconscious it's like fishes in water. And these fishes are going to just go and nibble on those hooks. And the hooks are the problems. And sooner, a subconscious thought will grab onto the hook. And all you have to do is pull it out. So the better you are at defining problems and identifying and defining problems in a way that makes your brain want to solve them, the easier you will solve the problem and the less problems you will have.
So the better questions would be asking what action can be taken, rather than just freeze on, okay, I have this huge problem that basically I'm just too scared to think of any possibilities.
Yes, so we can kind of we cannot tie the loop together back to where we started, Apollo 13, right? What's the problem? The problem is that an oxygen tank exploded in space. Well, that doesn't help. That's not very good. Or the problem is they're going to die unless we can get them home. That's the terrible problem. The problem is, how can we give the astronauts clean air again? Considering that we can't send any material to them because they're in the middle of nowhere. What material do we have on that spacecraft that can be refurbished so that they can breathe fresh air again? That's a problem. That's a problem that now the creative engineers can start thinking about. Yeah, let's try different things until we have a solution that what about this? What about that? Now we are in a positive problem-solving mode, not a freezing, oh, look at this terrible problem mode. It's like, the tiger is going to kill me. It's not a good problem to have in your head. How can I kill the tiger before he kills me? It's a much better problem to have.
How I can run away before he get to me.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
So I would like to backtrack a little bit. You mentioned that you're an introvert and you would go to your island for maybe 1/4 of the time in a year to basically consolidate the ideas. I'm just curious, during those quiet time, would you write down a lot of questions and let the subconscious you just mentioned to just grab on the idea, or you basically just like, I let go and I just let any ideas flow to me?
I don't write down the problems there. I write down the problems when I am in the inspiration phase. So for example, for me during this time, I'm actually not in isolation phase. I am doing so many interviews with creative people. I just came off the phone right now with the head of innovation at Schneider Electrics. And I was writing down, I was getting so much input from him, and I was writing down questions and insights and everything in my notebook. So I do this analogy to inspiration literally means to breathe in, to inspire. That I just inspired. So it's a medical term from the beginning, is to breathe in. Okay, but creativity is to create something, is to breathe out. And it's possible to breathe out if you're breathing in, right? You can try it. You cannot do it. Like either you're breathing in or you're breathing out.
Right.
Okay. So inspiration, get as much inspiration as you can. But a lot of people are so focused on that all they do is they constantly breathing in. They're never stopping to breathe out. So when I do the interviews and when I meet people, I get all these questions and I write down the questions in my notebook, and I have these all hypotheses, and like I'm using my active brain. But when I'm on the island, I don't even look at those notes. I'm letting the subconscious take all those things. I interviewed a sculptor in Hong Kong actually, and he talked about the divine ideas and the mortal ideas and the divine ideas. And the mortal ideas is when your active brain says, how can I surprise my wife on her birthday? So I'm trying to come up with an idea. I'm trying to solve it, right? And he said, how can I do a sculpture about the coronavirus? And he said, okay, I should do a sculpture. And then he makes a sculpture. But then he also has the divine ideas. And that's when he just goes to sleep. And he wakes up in the middle of the night and he has an idea. It just comes to him in his sleep. He's not trying to solve anything. It just kind of comes there. It's from his subconscious. And he showed me his 2 sculptures. And he showed me a bunch of sculptures. And we could see which of these came from his mortal brain and which came from the divine idea. Because the divine ideas are much better. It's like he said, they don't come from me. They come from somewhere else. From a God or from the universe. They just come through me. I interviewed a Swiss watchmaker yesterday, and he was working 15 hours per day for like 10 years. He hardly never slept. And then his body crashed. So he slept 15 hours per day for months. He almost slept all day long. And during that phase, he came up with his best watch. And he could go back into that same dream night after night to continue to develop the watch in his dream while he was sleeping. So you have to, and that's what I'm going after. Those are the divine ideas. So it's so important to get all that input, but then just pause that, go away, in my extreme way, go and isolate yourself on a private island. But everyone should do this. Disconnect, turn off your mobile phone, turn off your email, spend 1 day in a forest, do nothing. And that's what, study Nobel Prize winners and see when did they have the Nobel Prize winning idea. It's when they were out in a forest, when they were looking into a fire, when they were sleeping. It's a high percentage of Nobel Prize winning ideas have come in when the brain is in that divine state.
When you're not pushing yourself for an answer, and then suddenly it would come up.
Yes, you're not even trying to be creative. You're actually trying to empty yourself. You're not part of the process. You're just empty. You're open for ideas to come to you. That's right. All the people I interview who talk about this, they say that they didn't have the idea was given to them. And the best idea I've ever had in my life is the same thing. I woke at 2 a.m. in a hotel in Bangkok, and there's no drugs. So everyone says, was there drugs involved? I said, no drugs involved. I was sober. But 2 a.m. I woke up and I had this amazing dream of a whole universe of characters that I turning into a book. I always look at these ideas. I didn't come up with it. It came to me. And especially now in this coronavirus time, people are so focused on trying to understand everything, like reading all these websites about news and how to solve it, what's going on. And that's great. We're in research mode. But then we also need to be in that, okay, fine, now I have all this information. Now go for a walk. Like, please just go for a walk. Go into the forest and just don't do anything, because otherwise you're just going to be stressed and tired and confused. And you need your brain to be the opposite, calm, reflective, empty, open for ideas to come to you.
It's almost like being too overwhelmed by the ideas.
Yeah, and one of the people I just interviewed is Sue Williams. She's the head of the Scotland Yard for hostage negotiations. It's kind of like the money heist, the real person money heist. She's been it for 20 years. She's an amazing character. And I asked her, so because now we can talk about a crisis. Someone is being threatened we're going to give us the money or we're going to kill this person, right? And why should I even listen to her? So now we're talking life and death crisis, and she has no information whatsoever about these people. So she needs to pick up small details or hints of what so she needs to be so open for any kind of a clue of what the information they're giving her. They don't want to give her any information. And she said, the most important thing she said in those situations is that she needs to get rid of all the negative bias. Of like, oh, let's say it's ISIS. Oh, I know ISIS, they're so violent. No, that's a negative bias. Get rid of that. Maybe this person is not violent. So, because she said, I have to be in a positive frame of mind, because I need to be able to pick up that one clue that it sounds like there's a train in the background. Okay, they might be close to a train track. So if I have any negative thoughts in my head, I'm going to miss that. And I think that's such a good advice on dealing with crisis, is to not be positive, like, oh, let's all be positive, but have a positive, get rid of the negative mindset so that we are open for those flashes of positivity that just come like that. And we need to be seeing those. If I can end with this, one of my favorite words is opportunity. Okay, opportunity, and the etymology of the word opportunity is that it's actually a name of a wind. Like you have a storm, you have a tornado, you have a hurricane. Different winds have different names. Opportunity is a name that the Romans, during the Roman time, 2,000 years ago, they would give this to a specific wind. So what was the wind of opportunity? It was the wind, it literally means that wind that brings you back to your harbor. So the Romans were in the middle of the nowhere. There was no wind. They were starving to death. They had no water. And suddenly the wind came, not the wrong wind, the right wind, the wind that will bring them home to their harbor. Finally, they will see their families again. That was the opportunity. But it also shows you that when that wind came, they had to stand up. They had to notice it. They had to say, oh, it's opportunity. We need to hoist our sails and we need to sail, because opportunity didn't bring them home. Opportunity means the wind is here and we can get home if we grasp the opportunity. And that you do by being positive and seeing the opportunities early, so that you can hoist your sails and start to sail home again.
I really like that analogy. So we have to grasp when the opportunity comes, we have to grasp it.
Exactly. And we need to be good at seeing it. So you can compare how countries reacted. Like Singapore saw this is coming up. we need to prepare our population for it, and so they're ready for it, and they quickly did. And Singapore contained it for the longest time until now. It's spreading in the dormitories because people are living 12 people in the small rooms, obviously. But in the society, we never really, in the open society where most people live, we never went past a couple of hundred cases, and we have, I think, 8 dead or something like that, which is amazing. Sweden is twice the size of Singapore, and we have 2,000 deaths. Now, Sweden is doing a total different approach. Sweden is saying, let's not close the society down. Let's have a bunch of people. Every country will have to go through this. We'll just go through it quicker. And that is a different approach. I love that I'm a Swedish person living in Singapore, because I am seeing the 2 extremes, and I'm part of both. And I'm rooting for both. But they both saw an opportunity and reacted to it. And we'll see in hindsight who is correct and who is wrong. But at least they see an opportunity. But then you also need to be able to change. Okay, so Singapore said don't wear masks, and suddenly Singapore said no, everyone's going to get 1 mask, and then said no, we're going to give a mask to every person in Singapore, and they gave a mask to everyone in Singapore. So this pragmatic ability to see that, okay, we did this, no, we're going to assess, where do we do now? Okay, now we do this. So constantly reevaluate what you're thinking is very important in a crisis.
Definitely open-minded.
The window of opportunity can change direction.
Yes, be open to not stick to your original idea if circumstances changes.
Very, always important, but extra important in crisis.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much today, Fredrik, for your insights and the time. So we hope to have more insight from you. And for audiences watching this video, if you would like to have a more direct conversation or a presentation by Fredrik, by all means, you can reach out to us or to Fredrik directly. So, but today we are very grateful for Fredrik's generosity on sharing his ideas with us.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and take care.